After reviewing over 1 million Pinterest pins, this is what's working on Pinterest in 2025. I recently had the pleasure to have the CEO of Tailwinds come in and present to my Pinterest Manager Academy students. And what Danny Maloney shared is what they found after reviewing over 1 million pins on their platform. And they have this unique data and insight because their platform is an approved partner of Pinterest. And so they have insight and data that a small business owner or creator just would never have access to. So it's really cool to see what they found, the trends, themes, and I can't wait to share with you in this video what's working on Pinterest in 2025. Whether you are a business owner who's wanting to see success on the platform, or maybe you're a Pinterest manager wanting to get some insight so that you can help grow your client's account, this is a video that you are going to want to watch. Be sure to like and subscribe to my channel because that helps me grow and it helps me come back and serve you week after week. And if you're wanting to become a Pinterest manager, I would love for you to check out a link below that is for my Secret Pinterest Manager podcast, where I'm going to give you the behind the scenes for how I scaled to 5-figure months as a Pinterest manager. And if you are a business owner who wants to hire a Pinterest manager, I have a link for you as well. The link I have for you is a link where you can fill out information about your business and I will connect you with an amazing Pinterest manager. So that is my Pinterest manager hire form. Number 1, in 2022, I was seeing insane reach with my idea pins. I was repurposing TikTok videos, Instagram reels, uploading them and creating idea pins, and I was getting thousands, sometimes tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of impressions and saves. However, at the end of 2022, Pinterest abruptly decided to essentially get rid of their creator rewards program, and then shortly after also announced that they were getting rid of individual pin formats, which also included idea pins. Now, what they did decide to do was keep around the features that we got access to when they rolled out idea pins. So although we just had this format of pins, this sort of umbrella term of pins, we still did have those unique features that came along with idea pins. Some of those features included being able to upload multiple static images, multiple videos. We had stickers, music, text overlay, and those were really cool features. So it's kind of nice that we still have access to those. However, I did notice a big shift in the reach of my video content when they decided to get rid of idea pins. So what we're seeing working in 2025, and this is something that Danny shared when he was sharing this data from over 1 million Pinterest pins, is they were finding that static pins are really what's performing best right now overall. Now, I do recommend still utilizing video content, especially if you create it regardless for your business. And maybe even if you don't consistently create video content, I still think it's worth testing on Pinterest. However, what I teach my students inside my Pinterest Manager Academy is to create at least 1 to 2 static pins a day that are fresh for their clients. So if you are a business owner going the DIY route, I would recommend the same thing for you. And of course, this can vary depending on your business and how much content you have. So for example, one of my students, she was working with somebody who's really a prolific blogger, and her client was creating 2 blog posts a week. And you can create multiple pins for each new blog post. So for her, she could be creating a lot more fresh pins on a daily basis rather than just one. So you're gonna have to kind of tweak the tactics depending on your unique business and how much content you have, how many products you have. But I would say at least 1 to 2 fresh static pins a day. And I would lean more into static pins just because we're seeing those work better and doing more testing with video pins. So for my students, I recommend creating at least a couple of video pins, up to 2, at the most 4 video pins on a weekly basis. So that's not necessarily even 1 a day. But if you're finding that video pins are performing better for you, of course you can lean into that. But I think you're gonna find that static are performing better for you. And in 2025, that is the pin format that we're seeing sort of lead the way. Tip number 2, this was so interesting the way that Danny Maloney shared this with my students. He said that what they found is that it really takes a viral pin up to 1 to 2 years to really peak in performance. And after that peak, those pins continue to be distributed. So this is also just a reason, if you are a business owner watching this, why you need to stop sleeping on Pinterest if you have not been utilizing it. And also, if you're a Pinterest manager, that is a huge selling point for your services. A reason that a business owner should want to market on Pinterest is because your content it just has such a longer lifespan on Pinterest compared to other platforms. Now, when you're thinking about this taking 1 to 2 years before it actually peaks, that is amazing, but also you want to think about creating multiple pins on a daily basis because not every pin is going to go viral, right? And so yes, it's amazing that that pin can continue to perform for you, but the way that he was explaining it to my students that I thought was a really unique perspective was that when you're creating these pins on a daily basis that are fresh, you're only going to have a handful of like quote winners or ones that go viral. And the more pins that you are creating, the more chances you are giving Pinterest to find your pins that are, quote, the winners. And so that's why it's important to be creating fresh pins on a daily basis, because eventually when you do have a pin take off, it is going to reach a peak and then it's going to come back down. And you might see your traffic start to come back down. So that's why it's important to continue to feed your Pinterest account with fresh content. Plus, the platform really thrives off of fresh content now. There was an algorithm change years ago where they were pushing for fresh content, and it was because Pinterest really wanted to put the user experience first. And if Pinterest users were coming to the platform and seeing the same ideas, entire pins over and over again, that wasn't creating a great experience. So they want fresh content, and you are giving yourself the opportunity, you're increasing those chances that you are going to have more viral pins if you are creating more pins, obviously. So not every pin is going to be a winner, and that's why it's important to be pinning multiple times a day, giving Pinterest that fresh content, and you're going to increase the chances that you have multiple winners, right? So that is tip number 2. Tip number 3, if you are going to create video pins, as I shared before, I would take TikTok videos, Instagram Reels, and I would repurpose them for Pinterest. If you are going to create video pins, video content that is longer in terms of the dimensions performs better. So typically, I would recommend 1,000 by 1,500 pixels for your Pinterest pin dimensions. But with your video pins, Tailwind, once they assessed over these 1 million pins, the video pins that were 1080 by 1920 pixels, those ones actually did perform better, so a little bit longer. So for tip number 3, make your video pins longer. Tip number 4, you might actually want to make your Pinterest pin descriptions a little bit shorter. After reviewing over 1 million Pinterest pins, Tailwind actually found amongst the most viral pins that their pin descriptions were around 200 characters. So you do have 500 characters when you are uploading that pin and writing that description. And I always taught my students to use natural language, but that they could use up to 500 characters, obviously. However, the theory that Danny Maloney shared when he was sharing with my students these findings was that it might actually make it easier for Pinterest to classify your pin and that content if it is a little bit shorter. So of course, make those 200 characters keyword rich, but it is a little bit shorter, obviously, than 500. So moral here, keep your pin descriptions. It always comes down to testing, but maybe try testing some pin descriptions that are a little bit shorter and robust, around 200 characters. And that is tip number 4. Tip number 5, depending on your niche, you might actually want to consider not using text overlay on your Pinterest pins. So this is something that I've shared before when I have created episodes about how to create scroll stopping pins. And I will make sure to link some of my other YouTube episodes on Pinterest pin designs below. But this was something that Tailwind also found after reviewing all of these pins. So depending on your niche, let's talk about some niches that it might make sense to not use text overlay. I notice with a lot of photography that there's no text overlay on those pins. Also, a lot of style and fashion, we're not seeing text overlay on those pins. So one way to figure out if your niche is really utilizing text overlay, or maybe you're seeing some of the top ranking pins not use text overlay, is to simply just do some searches on Pinterest and see what's coming up. And when I say top ranking, when you perform a search on Pinterest, whatever comes up first in that feed when you've performed that search, those are the top ranking pins. So I would also recommend opening an incognito browser, because that's also going to remove any preconceived notions that the Pinterest algorithm has about you and what they are showing you when you perform that search. So that is always a really great way to just figure out what's performing well, is to just go to Pinterest and perform a search. Now, one thing that they did share for example, is that food. So recipes, food blogging, that almost all of those pins did have text overlay. So they found that you need some context. So once again, depending on your niche, you might only want to create pins with text overlay, especially if it's a pin in content that really needs more context. Tip number 6, you have to be creating fresh content on Pinterest in 2025. I shared that earlier in the episode, but it has been confirmed by Tailwind after reviewing over 1 million Pinterest pins that you still do need to be focusing on fresh content. And I shared that's really because Pinterest changed the algorithm, and this is not an option really. And when you're thinking about fresh content, it doesn't necessarily have to be a new URL. So one way that people got a little overwhelmed with this push for fresh content, they thought they were going to have to be publishing a new blog post or new product every day so that they could have that new URL on Pinterest. But there's really different types of fresh content. So you can think of it as a hierarchy. The most fresh type of pin would be a new URL and a new pin design. But below that, which would also still be fresh, but maybe not as fresh, would be a new pin design to a URL that's already been shared on Pinterest. And then I would say the least preferable type of content on Pinterest is going to be something that you're repinning. So it's a pin that's already been shared, the image and the URL have already been shared on the platform. And I have very occasionally repinned content, especially if it's seasonal. So for example, one of my clients, she was a teacher and she created a Valentine's Day blog post. She created the blog post very close to Valentine's Day. So we didn't have a lot of time to get these pins pushed out before the holiday. So a whole year later, we decided to repin those pins that didn't really have enough time to be distributed before the holiday. So that's one scenario where you might decide to repin. But tip number 6, you have to be creating fresh pins daily. I would say at least 1 to 2 fresh pins a day. Tip number 7. One of my clients, she had a very subtle brand and the colors were almost a little bit muted, but she was a former teacher and within her business, she created classroom decor and the decor sold super well. But within her pin designs, I actually didn't use her brand colors. In her pictures, of course, one way to help sell her product was to show how the classroom decor would look in a classroom. And sometimes they were soft pastel colors, sometimes they were more bright and fun depending on what the classroom decor theme was. But when I was designing the pins and the text overlay and sometimes the background colors, I would pull colors from the image and it would really just kind of make those pins pop and catch your attention. And this is sort of what Tailwind found, was that some of the top performing pins, actually all of the top performing pins, weren't using brand colors, but they were actually using colors from the image on the pin. So this was something I found really interesting, and that's something I want you to try when you're designing your Pinterest pins. Being, not scared to step away from your brand colors, but try something new and make your pins pop with the colors that are being pulled from your pin images. So I hope you found this episode helpful and hopefully it debunked some things that you might have thought to be true about Pinterest and what's working in 2025. I would love for you to like this video, subscribe to my channel. That helps me continue to give you the best content, come back week after week, and let me know in the comments what questions or things that you found interesting about this episode. And don't forget, I have some helpful resources linked below as well. So I can't wait to see you soon in next week's episode. Bye for now.